Welcome to Skinner Sports Network. Now, today we are going to do a video on the Las Vegas Raiders. They have an interesting situation in Las Vegas right now, starting with Max Crosby, who is one of the best defensive players in the league right now, up there with Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, a lot of those top guys who can get to the quarterback, and head coach Antonio Pierce. Pierce and Max Crosby have a great relationship. You have someone like Ian Rappaport. He reported that the Raiders' Max Crosby has drawn a line with owner Mark Davis, where he has made it clear Antonio Pierce should be retained as head coach. And listen, I think that's a good message to start, especially if you want a coach like that and to keep the coach in Antonio Pierce. I thought he did a good job for what he had on that team this season. And, I think guy like Pierce can really help that team. It seems like the team really rallies around him. And, Max Crosby said, I've been very vocal about who I want, that being AP. The guys in the locker room feel the exact same way, so if I got to be the bad guy and say it in public, so be it. So it seems like the people in Las Vegas and the guys in that locker room can really rally around this guy right here, Antonio Pierce. He he really did a good job once stepping it in. The Raiders seem to play some good football that they haven't been playing the beginning of the season and throughout the season. And once he stepped in, it seemed like the guys could really rally around him and that he did his job. An interesting thing about Antonio Pierce is that he was actually a fan of the Raiders growing up. Many people have said that in the media, and that's pretty cool. I mean, if he can coach for one of the teams that he was a fan of as a child, that'd be pretty cool. But something cool that was posted was people like Robert Spillane, Morig, Epps, Paolo Mayo advocating for Antonio Pierce. You have something like this from Spillane's Mad Max, which is Max Crosby. Hire AP. That was reposted to Spillane's story. You can see it on Morig's story. Which is all these guys, Marcus Epps, and then Isaiah Palomeo. There really seems to be a strong advocate or strong advocation for head coach Antonio Pierce. And I think what's going to be interesting is if he does get hired, how do you look at this draft and what should you do in this draft? Now, we're going to head over to PFF, which we've been doing in our videos, and we're going to do a mock draft for the Raiders. PFF does really good. You can put it to care for positional value, draft for needs, randomness, less randomness, draft for needs is high, care for positional value is high, so we can get some good value, especially when we get graded on these drafts. Having less randomness allows you to really get the most realistic board for when your picks are. We're going to be the Las Vegas Raiders here. 13th pick. Let's see what we can do here. 7-round mock draft coming up right now. And we're going to head to the 13th pick. And here we go. So, to take a look at the board, Caleb Williams at 1, Drake Mack 2, Marvin Harrison 3, Malik Neighbors, Rome Oduzze, Jaden Daniels goes to the Giants. You have Joe Alt. You have Cooper DeJean, Jerzane Newton, Olu Fashuanu, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix. So looks like a majority of the quarterbacks have come off the board. Now, you might want to look at quarterback. Could you get a guy later in the draft? Because let's take a look at available quarterbacks. J.J. McCarthy, you have the 44th pick. Maybe you wait there. Maybe get a guy like Spencer Rattler or Jordan Travis. I just think that you might look at other things here, like invest in the O-line. You have a running back like Zamir White who did pretty well that second half of the season. He had that 100-plus yard game against the Kansas City Chiefs on Christmas Day, which was cool to see. Josh Jacobs may be going elsewhere. And that's really going to make an interesting situation. You could wait later rounds just because there's nothing really crazy. You could wait to get Jordan Travis because remember, Jordan Travis had a leg injury and He's going to be recovering from that. Maybe you get him a little bit in like the second or third round, depending on your picks. But I think we're going to look elsewhere here. I think you got to look at the offensive line, the defensive line, tackles like Fuega. Fuega. That is a difficult name. Fuega. That's how you get it. But we are going to take a look at him. And he played 12 games, 700 offensive snaps, 349 run, 351 pass, 0 sacks allowed, 2 quarterback hits, and 10 hurries. Pretty solid, has a run block grade of 90.9, a zone block grade of 91.3, pass block 77.9, which is pretty solid. But it seems like you could get a good run blocker in Talise Fuega. I think that's going to be the pick here. Work on getting a strong tackle for your team, and I think that's where you could go. You could also look at J.C. Latham here, but I think we're going to go with Fuega. I really think that he's the better tackle here. You have 3 tackles, Talise Fuega, J.C. Latham, Armarius Mims. You could maybe trade back and get Jordan Morgan, but we're going to take Fuega here. I think that's the best pick here on the clock at pick 13. So we are going to do that here. And now we're going to get to pick 44. Do you take receiver here? It's pretty tempting, but you could look at DB. You picked up Jack Jones from the New England Patriots, so you could build around him. The secondary, you could pick someone good here. You could look at Kalen King. He didn't really have the best 23 season. You could look at someone like Josh Newton, who could be pretty solid out of TCU. Good, solid coverage grade in 77.8. He gave up 1 touchdown, 1 interception, gave up a passer rating of 64.8, which is pretty solid for a corner. You could look there, lean there if you wanted. I think we're also going to take a look at the defensive tackle here. Chris Jenkins could be a good guy. Played at Michigan, really was huge in that playoff run for Michigan. I think that for the Raiders, getting a good defensive interior to build him around Max Crosby, get him some good defensive interior. I think a guy like Chris Jenkins here, who can be a good run defender, you could work on his pass rush if needed. He had 2 sacks this season, 18 quarterback hurries. I think that's interesting to look at. It says his ADP, average draft position, 50.3. You could look at that. Maybe you could wait till pick 77 to get someone like Tavondre Sweat, which is something we might look at here. It says to look at DB, so we're going to take a look at safety here. You could look at someone like Kalen Bullock out of USC. Has a good coverage grade in 82.2. Run defense, not the best. That could be developed with the right head coach in Antonio Pierce. I think Pierce would be a good guy to help fix that. You could wait to get Javon Bullard later in the draft or wait for a safety. They're saying to look at linebacker here. You could look at linebacker. You got Edrin Cooper, who's solid. Jermaine Trotter Jr. is someone who I like. 269 run defense snaps, 315 coverage snaps. So it seems like he can mesh well, do both. 24 receptions on 27 targets, though. Not the best. You would like to see that be down as a linebacker so you can get more stops. Let's look around, Offensive line is always something to look at here. You could look to get a center, Jackson Powers Johnson, who's pretty solid. I think building the O-line here for someone like Zamir White later could get a number 2 guy to have behind Zamir White. I think Zamir White's a solid back. There were a couple runs in that Kansas City game that he broke off and was running fast, strong, decisive, knew where he wanted to go. And that's good because Josh Jacobs' future is up in the air. I don't think he's going to be the long-term running back there. I don't think they're going to offer him the right contract that he's going to like. Could see him look at a team like Baltimore. Could see him go to the Giants if Saquon ultimately leaves. Should be interesting to see what happens to Josh Jacobs. But we're going to take a center here. Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. Most complete center right here. He can pass block, run block. He can just do both things. He's best at pass blocking. and run blocking is pretty solid, pretty good actually, with an 85.2 grade. Didn't allow a sack, didn't allow any hits, and only had one hurry. So I think building the O line here in the beginning of the draft with Jackson Powers Johnson, I think that's what we're going to do here. ADP is at 55.6. We have the 44th pick. Not going to have another good pick till 77. So we ultimately should take Jackson Powers Johnson here if we're not going to have the 77th pick, which is where we're going to want to go. I think it's the best place to go. Build the O-line here. Maybe you have something in Aiden O'Connell, and he just needs a line. I mean, Aiden O'Connell has some solid games this year. Was pretty solid under Antonio Pierce. You might want to look at a quarterback later in the draft just to have some competition in Las Vegas. Now, what we're going to do here, let's take a look at defensive tackle here. Could get Dwayne Carter. Unfortunately, Sweat went, which isn't best here. I wish we could have gotten him. He's a great player from Texas, was really great, and I think he's going to be a great defensive tackle here in the NFL. Unfortunately, we couldn't get him. Looking at wide receiver here could be interesting because you have Devontae Adams, you have Jacoby Myers. Maybe get another guy. I mean, if Roman Wilson was sitting here, yeah, you might want to take him, but there might be bigger needs. You could look at linebacker, Peyton Wilson or Lia Fawu. This is a different one, but take a look at him. Maybe he's a good pass coverage guy. You have someone like Robert Spillane who is solid. You had Diablo who is pretty good. You have some solid linebackers there, but it never hurts to get linebackers. Diablo, Spillane, those were some good guys at linebacker, and I think those are two guys you can work with. Look at DB here. Look at corner. You have Nehemiah Pritchett. You have Kyrie Jackson, transfer from Alabama. I think we're gonna look at Serene still. Serene still. I like him. He did really well. Had an interception in the national championship game and almost got it for a pick six. You have a good selection of corners here if you wanted to wait till pick 112. We're going to take a look at quarterback and running back. You could look to get Trey Benson out of Florida State. He had 905 yards on 156 attempts in 13 games, 5.8 yards per carry, and 14 touchdowns, 20 receptions, 227 yards. Something to look at here. Could be a solid back. You could look to get Blake Corum if he's still around. Bucky Irving. Listen, in this draft, it is going to be a lot of great running back talent because if you scroll down, you have Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Bucky Irving out of Oregon, who I like, Audric Estime, absolute beast. If Kyron Williams is working in the NFL, I'm sure teams will take a look at Estime, who produced a lot. Donovan Edwards is good. Will Shipley, Braylon Allen, Ray Davis. A lot of good running back talent in this draft this year. And I think that's why you're going to see some running backs go later. Some will go early. Some will go later. Someone like Jonathan Brooks here went to the Denver Broncos at pick 76. So that'd be interesting to look at. So we're going to see if we can wait to get Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin. I think he's going to be our guy. Could look at tight end here. Could look at Cade Stover later in the draft. But they don't even use Michael Mayer right now. Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame is a great tight end. They just need to use him. They just need to find a way to utilize him. And, I heard an interesting thing. I circled it here because they're looking for an offensive coordinator. And Colin Cowher said former Arizona Cardinals head coach Cliff Kingsbury is a strong candidate for the Raiders' open offensive coordinator position if they retain Antonio Pierce. Cliff Kingsbury coming back to the NFL would be interesting, especially as an OC. He is good at an offensive coordinator position. Not sure about head coach, but him as an offensive coordinator would make sense. He has the offensive mind for that. Retain him or pair him with Antonio Pierce. And I think that's a solid pairing. Could also help. But let's see. Wide receiver. Roman Wilson really is something I've been liking right now. But we're going to take a look at safety. Sion Vaki could be solid. Jade Barron could be interesting. He might be there later. Some of these guys you can wait to get a little later just because of how the board will fall. You could look at edge here, Gabriel Murphy. Solid season, 7 sacks, 12 hits, 42 hurries, a batted pass. Pretty solid pass rusher. You compare him with Max Crosby, though that's not something to look at here. I think we need to look at DB rather soon. Quarterback. Let's take the edge off of here and let's look at quarterback. I mean, Spencer Rattler could be someone to compete. He had that good. He's been good at South Carolina. He had a good season when he was in Oklahoma. And, steady improvement here 1483, 3032, 3183, 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Interceptions to go down. You'd like to see him throw more touchdowns. Something to look at. Not saying he's the best option here. I really think getting Jordan Travis would be the move. I know he's gotten injured, but here's the thing. I think the injury will push him back, but he will be a third-round quarterback possibly just because of the injury. It's going to be what happened with Hendon Hooker in Tennessee. If you remember, against South Carolina, he tore his ACL on a play where he went to run the ball, and he slipped to the third round, went to the Detroit Lions, and I think that's what we're going to do here. Jordan Travis is an excellent athlete, an excellent quarterback, can throw the ball deep, middle, short, can run the ball. I think he's the guy, and I think Jordan Travis would be a good pick here. I know it says his average draft position is 158.4, but I think we got to snag Jordan Travis here. Oop. And now we're going to get to pick 112. We're going to take a look here. Defensive interior. You could get Tyler Davis, Howard Cross, two good defensive interior guys here. You could also look at running back, get somebody like Bucky Irving, who I like a lot. Bucky Irving, 91.1 and 22, 88.1, 55 receptions on 61 targets, 395 yards, had 1,192 yards on 186 attempts in 14 games, had 11 touchdowns. He's fast, shifty, quick, can run to the outside well, can slither his way through the middle. And I think this would be an interesting guy to pair with Zamir White. And, I think Estime would be pretty good too. I think Estime and Zamir White, because you're going to build around Zamir White. Josh Jacobs won't be back. You got to look at Estime, who had an amazing season for Notre Dame. 12 games, 209 attempts, 1341 for the yards, 1,341, 6.4 yards per attempt, 18 touchdowns, had 17 receptions on 17 targets for 142 yards. I think Estime's the pick here, and I think he'd be a good pairing with the quick and powerful Zamir White. I think that would be the pick here. We're going to go Audric Estime here. I think that's going to be the pick because you need a 1-2 punch. You built the line a little bit. But now here's we're going to start looking at corner. Someone like Kamal Hayden out of Tennessee. I watched him a little bit this year. His run defense isn't the best, but most DBs aren't the best at the run defense. It usually gets worked in over time and developed over time, but his coverage grade being 90.4, and he didn't allow a touchdown, had 3 interceptions. You could look at Cam Hart. Cam Hart would be a solid option. Maybe you could trade up a little bit if needed if you wanted to get 2 corners. I think you only need 1 here. Something like a defensive interior I think could be fixed through free agency. Maybe sign Chris Jones, throw the money out there. He's going to want the money, and if you have the cap space, spend the money on someone like Chris Jones or someone like Sheldon Rankings from Houston would be good for the defensive interior. O-line we took a look at here. Linebacker could be interesting to look here. We're going to take a look here at linebacker. I think you could look at someone like Cedric Gray later in the draft, which would be good. But I think Kamal Hayden would be good. He's a cornerback from Tennessee. I think only allowing 0 touchdowns and having 3 picks really shows that he's locked down. Could be a good pairing with Jack Jones in that secondary. Marcus Peters won't be there no more. I think they're going to get rid of him. So get a young guy like Kamal Hayden, Tennessee corner. Let's add him to the board here. taking him at pick 150. We got pick 190 and pick 234 to still fill some holes here. You took your running back, you took your quarterback, invested in the O-line. Take a DB here. Look at safety and look at linebacker to finish it out if needed. You have Diablo, you have Spillane. So, you know, it's interesting to look at. We're going to take a look here at safety. You have Malachi Moore, who I like. Malachi Moore at Alabama, I've watched him. I watch a lot of Alabama games. And I think someone like Malachi Moore, I know he let up, 3 touchdowns, only had 1 interception, but he's someone that you could work on, give him some time. But Malachi Moore is an athlete. He's someone that you could look at. Look at Jalen Green, not the basketball player from Houston. I know it's spelt the same way, but different guy. You could look at Keaton Oladapo. So he's Oregon State, pretty solid athlete. If you look at some of his stats, 1 touchdown allowed, 2 interceptions, pretty solid ratio. Defensive snaps, he had 789, 800 snaps almost, which is pretty good. Good run defender, or not defender, but gets some good run snaps here, 315. Coverage snaps, 437. A lot to be desired there. Really someone to look at here if you wanted to go safety. He can play in the coverage, play in the run defense. I think we're going to take Oladapo here, Keaton Oladapo. I think it's a good pick here. I know it says not till 223, but safeties are going to go. And, I think that's a pick here. I'm going to circle that here. I think we're going to go with him. But we're going to look at linebacker too. See what's at linebacker before going with the safety. Linebacker, you could look at Jalen Ford here. Jalen Ford could be solid. Had 2 picks and only allowed 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Not bad. He's a good run defender. I think safety here, getting another safety to pair with Morig. I think that's something to be desired here. And I know we're at pick 190 and it says he's not going to go for a while. You could look at Tevin Wallace out of Kentucky. Nothing too crazy there. You could also look at Eugene Asante out of Auburn. But I think Keaton Oladapo, and I think that's going to be our pick here. I think it's the best one. Jordan McGee. Oh, he's a good pass coverage dude. Out of Temple, he can defend the run. I think we're going to take him, actually. I think we're going to look at our need of linebacker here. There's not going to be many good linebackers available later in this draft. So we're going to take Jordan McGee. I think that's going to be the pick here. So now we're going to finish out looking at defensive back. What's available? Nothing left at safety. Could look at center here. Bryce Foster. Be some depth. You could look at wide receiver if there's anything left. Sometimes there's a good... Oh, nope. The board's filled. You could look at O-line here. Kingsley Ugakon. That's a name right there. Charles Turner. That's a Kingsley Iguacan. That's how I read it. That's a hard pronunciation. I definitely have to look that on. Sorry for butchering that. Tight end maybe. Jared Wiley out of TCU. They have a good tight end. They just need to use it. I think we could also look here. Any extra corners available? No, nothing too crazy. Could look to get an extra tackle here out of Anthony Belton. He went to NC State. And nothing really too crazy. I like J.C. Davis out of New Mexico. Definitely shows some potential. Only 2 sacks, 0 hits, 6 hurries. So I think we're going to round it out getting some tackle depth here. I think that's the move. We're going to take J.C. Davis out of New Mexico. And that's going to finish it out here for the draft. Now we're going to see our grade. I'm interested to see what they say. Now we got a B. It looks like they're saying we reached for Jordan Travis, but in real life, someone like Jordan Travis would go in round 3. It's just how the board works out and where they think he's going. Jordan Travis will probably be a round 3 quarterback because a team will want him. Fuego out of Oregon State was an A. Powers Johnson, a C. I think that's better than a C. Audric Estime being an A. Kamal Hayden, Tennessee. B plus. Jordan McGee, we got a C minus. But J.C. Davis, some tackle depth here, we got a B plus. Overall, getting a B grade on the draft is not bad at all. I think you got to keep Antonio Davis. I'm interested to see what Raiders fans think or NFL fans think. I'm open to seeing what opinions are. Thank you for listening and watching to another episode of Skinner Sports Network. I'm your host, Nate Skinner. Make sure to subscribe, interact, like, comment, and I'm open to suggestions. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments.